And it's so true that when we keep hearing about different things happening all around the world, which sounds so negative, at the same time, God is working among people one on one, family after family, and that is so encouraging. And so, coming to our topic, we are in the fourth chapter of Song of Solomon, and we have seen first two verses in chapter 4. And we remember that chapter 4 begins with the dialogue of the believer, the king, what Jesus is saying to the believer. A believer, we need to remember, someone who has experienced cross, someone who has understood the resurrection of Jesus Christ, someone who has understood the ascension of Jesus to the Father, and with that, the authority that Jesus has bestowed on the believers. Having that understanding, how Jesus looks at the believer, we had started seeing that. And the words that he has used, just let me read for you from verse 1. He says, "Behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats going down from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn sheep, which have come up from the washing, every one of which bears twins, and none is barren among them." And then he goes on to speak about his lips in verse 3. But before coming again to verse 3, let me remind you that he has said that you have dove's eyes behind your veil. And before going ahead, I just want to remind you that the beauty of the believer is admired more by Jesus than anyone else. This is something that has touched my heart, and every time I have been studying this, just makes me feel to be alert and to be concerned about that all the beauty that we receive being with the Lord is not to show forth to the world, is not something to feel proud about, but it is to make Jesus and Jesus alone, to admire and to have it. So that is completely for him. And in verse 3, after we being able to see how Jesus has spoken about her eyes, about the hair, the teeth, and now we come to the next part of her face. And he goes on to say in verse 3, "Your lips are like a strand of scarlet, and your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil." So the word again, behind your veil, comes again. That again means that veil is continuously there. Your temples behind your veil are like a piece of pomegranate. Your neck is like the tower of David, built for an armory, on which hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. So this is what he speaks about in verse 3. So let us see what he is praising about the believer, or what Jesus is speaking about. So when Jesus is admiring and when Jesus is praising these different parts and the beauty of the believer, it is something that Jesus has been able to see in the believer. So last almost 2 months now, we are doing a study on the churches, the dispensation of church, every Tuesday. And one of the Bible teacher, an international Bible teacher, I have requested him to conduct that study for all the Indian pastors that we get connected on Tuesday. And it is so cool to understand that the things that we see in the dispensation of first church did not finish there, but then that carried on in the dispensation of second church. And then that was carried on in the dispensation of third church. So what it was meaning is, in the dispensation of third church, the characters that we read about the third church were there, plus the characters of second church and the characters of first church. So if you go on to seventh church, All the characters that we read about, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, are found in seventh church. So they are already there. And that view helps me to understand here that when Jesus is talking about different parts or praising the beauty of the believer, because Jesus has been able to see how this person, this believer, has been prepared with the experiences that he and she had to go through, the troubles, the struggles, the trials, the persecutions, and the wisdom and the time they have spent in the presence of God. With all those, the beauty that has come up, that he is speaking. But this is something that he sees. He can see that. And you will see in next few verses, the response of Shulamite is so that I am still the same. I cannot see that. And that is something that I really like. That many a times, you and I who feel probably I am the same the way I was yesterday. Probably I am the same the way I was 1 year back. Probably I am the same the way I was 10 years back. Probably I am the same. I still see my weaknesses. I still see my nature overpowers. I still see my character prevails. And I wonder where I have reached. And that is something, this part of the psalm will help us understand that is how we see ourselves. But the way Jesus looks at us is so different. He literally helps us to understand the changes that have come in us, the way he has built us. He's talking about lips. He begins with the lips. And interestingly, we have seen in verse 2, he speaks about teeth. He speaks about teeth first, and then he comes to the lips. Lips are used to speak, and what goes in only will determine what comes out. What we chew, what we have been receiving, what we are allowing to come into us is going to determine how beautiful our lips can be. And therefore, purposefully, he speaks about teeth first, and then he comes to talk about the lips. And this is what he says about the lips. Your lips are like a strand of scarlet. These lips are the cleansed lips, like we read in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 6 and 7. Isaiah chapter 6, verses 6 and 7 says, Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken with the tongs from the altar, and he touched my mouth with it and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, your iniquity is taken away, and your sin purged. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me. So these are the lips which have been touched by the coal with the tongs. These are the lips which are purified. These are the lips which are ready now to be sent and ready to be used to speak the salvation. These are the lips which have been dealt by the seraphim, the angel seraphim. These are the lips that he is talking about. And you and I so well understand the significance of our lips, the significance of our words. We as believers, Bible says, has got the power of life and death in our tongue, in our lips. What we speak can bring life and it can bring death. And it is also one of the reason of our long life. That's what Peter goes on to write, isn't it? If you read 1 Peter chapter 3, 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 10. Let me read for you in NKJV. It says, or would someone like to read?
For he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit.
He would love life. If we really want to live a long life, if we really want to see long and good life, healthy, good would mean healthy, happy life, then one of the secrets that Peter is revealing from the Word of God is, let us refrain our tongue from evil and let us refrain our lips from speaking deceit. So our lips are not only cleansed to speak the gospel of Jesus Christ, but our lips also are wise enough to refrain things so that we can live a long and good life. Those are the lips that Jesus is speaking about for a believer. And those lips, he literally praises. See, he speaks about those lips and he says, your lips are like a strand of scarlet. Now this scarlet is very special in the Bible. Let me bring you the references where the word scarlet comes. If you see Joshua chapter 2, verse 21. Joshua chapter 2, verse 21. Would someone like to read, please?
Agreed, she replied, let it be as you say. So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window.
Yeah, you remember this story. The scarlet cord over here was used for her redemption. This scarlet cord was the cause of her redemption. So this scarlet is speaking about redemption, right? If you see Genesis chapter 38, verses 28 and 29.
And so it was when she was giving birth, that one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, this one came out first. Then it happened as he drew back his hand that his brother came out unexpectedly, and she said, how did you break through? This breach be upon you. Therefore his name was called Perez.
30.
Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah.
So here is this poor maidservant who is a midwife who is helping the delivery of the babies, which were actually born to the daughter-in-law of Judah. And you know the story. If you read that chapter, you will get to know the story. But what I'm trying to bring is, this scarlet was used as an identification of authority, that this is the first baby. So he will be the first baby and he will have all the authority. So the scarlet thread was used to represent the authority. Although in this case there was deception, and then the one who had the scarlet cord tied, he was born second, and the earlier one was born. The other one came out first. But the intention of this lady was, I will tie scarlet thread to this baby so that when the baby is out and the other twin brother is out, we will know this was born first. So scarlet thread was used to represent firstborn, to represent the authority. but it changed. However, we are concerned about the scarlet thread. So scarlet thread was used in the book of Joshua as a sign of redemption. In other book, in Genesis, we read it as being used as sign of authority. Okay, and that is what Jesus is talking about, the lips, that your lips has authority to continue your redemption and to use the authority that I have given you. So it's on the basis of my words. We need to remember this. It's on the basis of my words that I will be judged. It's on the basis of my words that I prophesy. It's on the basis of my words that I speak words of healing. It's on the basis of my words that people are restored to the Father. And that is the beauty of the words. And that is what Jesus is presenting here. The strand of scarlet. In your tongue, you have the redemption, the message of redemption. In your tongue, you have the authority. And we know in Matthew chapter 27, verse 28 and 29, the Great Commission, Jesus has said, I have given you the all authority. Say, we have all the authority which we can use through our lips. I really always get so impressed how the gift of prophecy, for which Paul encourages, always seek the gift of prophecy. And one of the ways that I see in Old Testament how the gift of prophecy was used, especially about Abraham when I see, is that when he was in trouble, when he was in the time of trial, that was the time his words became words of prophecy. It is when Abraham and Isaac are walking up to the hill so that Abraham can offer Isaac as a sacrifice. That is when Isaac asks his father, Father, where is the sacrifice? And his father at this time is in the most vulnerable state to see, is in the place wherein he is about to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. Those are the last few steps that he was going to take. So since the time he has been asked to offer Isaac as the sacrifice, this is the time wherein he is about to do. And I wonder what type of emotion he is into. I wonder what type of challenge he has had. And here is his son who is, Abraham would be thinking that he would keep quiet, but he is putting question after question and asks, Father, where is the sacrifice? And why I am saying all these things is because probably that is the time when a man, a father, a person who is so much stressed, who is in such trial, there is a possibility that we may speak as a human being. But look at Abraham. That was the moment, the words that he spoke are the words of prophecy for Jesus Christ. And he says, God himself will provide. God himself will provide. He not only provided on the top of the hill, but he provided on the Golgotha. That was the prophetic word that came out of Abraham. And that makes me, that really warns me and says, it is when you are in the toughest time, it is when you are in the most horrible trial, the words that you speak are the words of prophecy. It is easy that we get into the mode of worship, we get into the mode of prayer, and then we are asking God, give me the word of prophecy, and we are speaking, and we often, we come up with wonderful spiritual words. But prophetic move does not wait for that atmosphere. It can come anytime. In the most toughest time of our life, a prophetic word can be released. That is lips. That is what he's talking about. And therefore, we as believers need to be so much aware. No wonder Jesus says, Bible says that your anger will never ever bring righteousness. He does teach that it is okay if you get angry, but do not sin. You ensure that your anger does not cross sunset. But he also says that always remember your anger will never ever bring righteousness. And therefore, he is praising lips by saying like a strand of scarlet. There is a purpose behind this color scarlet. Strand of scarlet. And he goes on to say, and your mouth is lovely. We need to be so careful about mouth. We know what happened in 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 12 to 19. 2 Kings chapter 20, verses 12 to 19 speaks about King Hezekiah when he got additional life, additional years. When he was very sick and he was crying bitterly, God heard his prayer and he asked his prophet to go back and tell him that you have got additional number of years. And when he gets the additional number of years, his neighbors who had been his enemy, they come to visit him. And what does this king do? He takes them and shows every part of his palace. Everything that he had been blessed with. He goes and shows them everything. And when he does that, then the prophet comes back and says, what did you do? I said, oh, they had come to inquire about my health, and I thought I will just show them how God has blessed me, and I have taken them to every corner of this palace to show the glory of the palace. And that's when the prophet says, because you have done that, you are gonna lose everything. I just cannot apprehend how Paul could hold the experience of visiting third heaven and seeing Jesus. And he holds that experience for 14 years. It's worth learning. It's worth learning that there are certain things that we need to hold secret in here. That's what makes our mouth beautiful. Not everything that we get to know, that not everything that we get to experience has to be spoken unless asked. Unless asked. When we read the writings of Paul, only twice, and I think, only 3 or 4 times, we see the interactions between Paul and Jesus are red in color, wherein he tells what Jesus had revealed to him, what Jesus had spoken to him. However, we see epistles after epistles written by Paul to the churches to keep them correct, to disciple them, to guide them. But he hardly uses, this is what Jesus had said to me. This is what Jesus has revealed to me. Only few times in those writings he speaks directly and tells us, this is what Jesus has told me. What you have understood from what Jesus had said, he was open enough to explain, teach, present, but he had his own style. And I think that is something we really need to understand as a believer, and Jesus admires that. Jesus admires that, and he says, your mouth is lovely. Your temples, could be cheek. In some of the translations, the word used is cheek. Your cheek, your temples behind your veil are like a piece of pomegranate. Again, he is reminding us that it is behind the veil. However, he uses the word pomegranate, and always remember, pomegranate speaks of abundance. Pomegranate speaks of abundance. And interestingly, he says, are like a piece of pomegranate. Not the whole, but a piece. That means it is cut, it is broken, and broken, and therefore a small piece is taken out. And he says, your cheek is like piece of pomegranate. There is abundance, but he's not talking about complete abundance, because there are all different parts in the body of Christ, which will bring that abundance. When all together is spoken, then he speaks of complete pomegranate. But here he is speaking only of one part of the body, and therefore he says piece of pomegranate. He, of course, wants to use the word abundance, but also takes care that it is not limited only to one part of the body, but it is applicable to the entire body. And I am a firm believer that this is something for sure Jesus does, is when he blesses his church, he does not bless only one part of the church, but he blesses the whole church. Any growth, any blessing, any calling, any leading is not for a person, not for an office, but it is for the whole congregation. It is for the whole body. He looks at it as the body of Christ. He is not talking only about cheek. He does not limit the abundance only to the cheek, but he leads it to everyone. And therefore, when he's talking about the cheek or the temples, he very clearly uses the word piece of pomegranate. Are you getting me? And so he goes on to use the next part of the body, coming from the lips to the cheek, and then he speaks about the neck. Now, neck is considered as one of the most beautiful part of beauty, especially in Russia. In that part of the world, I know some of the cultures, even in India, they and some of the tribes in Africa, in India, what they do is they, even when the girls are young, they start making necklaces of elephant teeth. They make necklaces and they keep on putting in their neck, so that this neck remains straight and longer and taller, because the taller the neck determines the beauty of the girl. And so is also accepted in Russia. Anyways, let us see what Jesus is saying about the neck of the believer. He says, your neck is like the tower. If you can imagine tower, straight, tall. See? So this is typical Eastern way of looking at it. And so he says, your neck is like the tower. Now, when the neck is like the tower, it also means, especially for people like me whose posture is so deformed, I should be standing straight and, but when I walk, I have a sort of hump, and many people, when they have hump, they get a small hump here. The tower and the hump that some people have is the opposite. Because of this hump, they start bending down. And I don't know if you have seen, so when I used to go to my village with my father, my grandma, she couldn't be straight because she was working in farm, and she would be always, cutting, and because they do that day in and day out, her back was so stiff that she could not stand straight. She would be always bent, and so is true with this neck, because they are continuously down. There is a hump, and it's no more tower-like. It is like hump, and I thought we will see one verse. If you come to Luke chapter 13. Let's read verse 11, please. Luke chapter 13, verse 11.
And a woman was there
Yes.
who'd been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all.
So this was the spirit of infirmity in her, spirit of weakness. But Jesus, the King, the beloved, is telling about the believer that your neck is straight like a tower, because there is no bondage of Satan. There is no oppression of the enemy, but you have been delivered, you have been freed, you have been made absolutely free, and therefore your posture is straight and your neck is like a tower. You can be absolutely straight and you walk showing the freedom that has come into you, the liberty that has come into you because of what Jesus did on the cross. And you have been completely delivered, and that has made your neck tall like a tower. See? And he goes on to add Tower of David, and that's why I relate it with what the Son of David did on the cross. The accomplishment of Jesus on the cross helps believers' neck to be straight, helps believer to be delivered from the spirit of infirmity and weaknesses. See, that is the result of what Jesus accomplished on the cross. And that brings beauty in us. What Jesus did on the cross brings beauty in us and keeps us free. It keeps us free from all bondages. An enemy cannot stick to us and cause infirmity and weaknesses into us, because Jesus has already liberalized us, and now we can stand straight. We can keep our neck straight. And he says, that's the reason your neck is like a tower of David. But he does not end there. There is something very interesting he goes on to add. Built for an armory. So there is a purpose why this neck is straight. It is not only for the beauty, it not only speaks about the deliverance that you have received, but it also gives a purpose, because it is built for an armory. And this armory means it is built to store arms and ammunitions. So this neck, which has the tongue, which we have learned how this tongue is beautiful, like a strand of scarlet, which speaks of redemption, which speaks of authority. This neck is also used as armory. There are arms stored in this tower of David. Now, let me introduce you what type of arms poet is talking about. See the next verse. He says, on which hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields. So what is being stored in this tower? Bucklers and shields. I just get excited to see there are no swords there. There are no javelins, spears. There are no spears there. There are no swords there. There are no equipments which can be used for offending or to offense or to kill or to attack. What are the ammunitions used here, stored here? They are bucklers and shields. Can you see that? He is talking only about the things which will save you, protect you. Those are the things which are stored in this tower of David. When I read this, I feel like, wow, Lord God, so true, so true. All shields of mighty men. They are mighty, no, undoubtedly. They are not having these defensive equipments because they are weak. They are not having these defensive equipments because they cannot fight. No, they are mighty men. They are strong, well equipped, they are shrewd, and they are sharp, trained. However, the things that they store for themselves are only the bucklers and the shields. And that is enough for them. That is enough for every believer. I just couldn't, when because we had almost 3 weeks of gap for this study that we are having today. I have been getting so many opportunities to go back to it again and again. And every time I have gone there, I would just get stuck. Really, Lord? Really, Lord? And he just keeps reminding, vengeance is mine. Fight is mine, Avish. All that you need to take care is yourself. Keep your bucklers, keep your shields in good position. I am there. I am there. I will take care. I will take care. He's so good. And in the flow, in that same flow, he goes on to say, your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed among the lilies. And we have seen earlier, when he refers to breasts, he is talking about faith and love. He is talking about faith and love. These are the two most beautiful things for any believer. But what attracts my attention is he says twins of a gazelle. Word twins tells us that they are born at the same time and they grow together. Twins. So if you start looking at faith and love, they both start together and they should grow together. We cannot be someone whose faith is high and love is low. Or love is high and faith is low. We cannot be someone. He admires and praises because both faith and love are like twins. And that's something we need to keep checking about. If my faith is growing, but there is lack of love, there is something wrong. If there is too much of love, but there is a struggle in faith, I need to be alert. There is something wrong. Let me get back and check, where am I going wrong? Because faith and love needs to grow together like twins of a gazelle. See? The word used here is twins. They need to be same, identical. And I wonder what word is used for gazelle in other versions. Would anyone like to please help me? Because I saw another word in another version, but I forgot what that word is.
NIV, it's gazelle. It's the same.
Gazelle? Okay. Any other version? I read in NLT. I don't know if anyone has NLT. But any other version, if you have, which uses some other word other than gazelle? Deers. It's like deers, which are very, very lively, which are... Sorry?
The Hebrew word is V. T-Z-V-I.
Okay. So it actually represents something which is live, which is full of excitement. You won't find sadness or dull moment there, but you find continuous joy and excitement and liveliness in that. And that is what he says. These faith and love are twins of gazelle, which are always bubbling. That type of love, that type of faith he is talking about. And he says, which feed among the lilies. Which feed among the lilies. If you see chapter 2, verse 16, Shulamite says, my beloved is mine and I am his. He feeds his flock among the lilies. So these lilies that he is talking about are the lilies where the Lord leads. Not the lilies which are found in wilderness, among the thorns. not among the world, but these lilies he is mentioning are the lilies where the Lord leads, where the Lord takes, and that's where this believer is fed. That's where the believer is contented, because it's the Lord who leads these lilies. Now, when I say these are the lilies wherein the Lord is leading, I want also to make you sure to understand that not every time He will be taking us to the lilies which are on a plain. That He will lead us and then, it's just a easy walk around and we are enjoying that place. No, that's not the reality. He will take us to the places wherein our trust is developed. Wherein our trust is developed. He continuously, I have started thinking, even till the time of our deathbed, He continuously works on our trust. Continuously. But then He calls it as lilies. He calls those circumstances, He calls those situations, He calls those moments of trials, if you want to say, as lilies. I was finding it a bit hard while talking to brothers in prison to help them understand that the place where you are in the purpose of God. And even while saying that, me in myself was saying, it's hard to believe that. It's hard to believe that. And while I was saying that to myself, because I was talking to 3 boys, 2 of them, they started convincing me how this place has been a blessing for them. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, salute to you guys. I really respect you guys. That you can see God's hand in this difficult situation. I came back this afternoon with humbled heart. Lord, I really appreciate the viewpoint, the attitude that these boys have. Because here I am, if there is a tiny little thing that goes against my planning, against my thinking, I will be so loud in expressing that. And here is someone who has already faced 7 years of statement or punishment without committing what he is being charged for. And now, after 7 years, because his lawyer has changed, now they are taking fresh proofs and all the things so that he can be proven not guilty. The biggest thing is just, I'm sharing with you, is the day when it was said that that crime was committed, he was in the prison and prison records are there.
Oh my goodness.
So it begins there. Yeah, so it's hard. It's hard that we are able to see that I am in a land of lily. But that is the attitude. That is the approach that we need to learn. That irrespective of where I am, Lord, thank you for this lily. Thank you for this beauty. Thank you for this fragrance. Yeah. We will continue this because next verse, 6th verse, is something that Shulamite speaks after all the praises that she has received. And then now the Shulamite speaks, and again she speaks the language that we started with. So we will start again there when we meet next time. Okay? Shall we close with a word of prayer? And Alan, would you like to close in prayer, please? Thank you.
thank you for your love for us.